The Great Hook, Emerges Empire. In the vast reaches of space, the Emerges Empire shone like a bright star. Over the years, a small group of brave humans had united many worlds under one banner. They built a great empire, full of hope and promise. Their people dreamed of a future where peace and progress ruled the stars. Yet, even in this age of light, shadows crept in the dark corners of the galaxy. Far away from the grand capital and the bustling space stations, there sailed a tiny old ship. Its worn metal and simple design made it look weak and unimportant. Most people in the Empire believed that only large, modern warships could bring glory and protect their home. No one paid attention to this small vessel, but hidden inside its aging hull was a secret power that even its crew did not fully understand. The ship's name was not famous, and its history was lost among the many legends of the Empire. However, the people who served on it were not ordinary. They were a humble crew, brave and determined, united by a strong will to survive. Each member of the crew had a story of hardship, yet they all shared a deep belief in the Empire and its dreams. They worked hard every day, knowing that even the smallest light could fight back the darkest night. In the quiet control room of the vessel, soft lights glowed on the simple panels. Commander Arlen, a calm and thoughtful leader, sat in his chair. He looked out into the endless black of space, where distant stars twinkled like tiny beacons of hope. Though his face showed the marks of many battles, his eyes held a spark of belief that no one else had. He knew that this little ship, though underestimated by all, had a special role to play. Deep in his heart, he believed that even the smallest force could one day change the course of history. Outside, the silence of space was suddenly broken by a tremor. Far ahead, the mighty armada of an unknown enemy moved steadily. This fleet was vast and powerful, with sleek warships that sparkled with advanced armor and bright energy weapons. They moved with precision and strength, a clear sign of the enemy's high technology and grand ambition. The enemy came from a dark part of the galaxy, where old grudges and ancient rivalries had festered into a desire for destruction. Their goal was to crush the light of the Emerges Empire and bring fear to every corner of space. Yet the Armada's strength only made the little ship seem even smaller and less significant. Many in the Empire had already written off the humble vessel as nothing more than a relic of a bygone era. In secret, however, the crew believed that this was a mistake. They had seen signs in the past, small victories and unexpected chances, where their old ship had outsmarted much larger foes. They remembered moments when a quick move or a brave act had saved lives. These memories filled them with hope and the belief that greatness could come from the most unlikely source. As the enemy armada drew nearer, tension grew not only on the ship but throughout the Empire. People whispered about fate and destiny, wondering if this long-overlooked vessel might be the spark that could ignite a turning point. In the deep silence of the ship's corridors, every creak and hum of its engines told a story of endurance. The vessel had sailed through countless dangers and survived storms of space dust and meteor showers. It had grown old but not weak, and its crew had learned to trust in its hidden strengths. Commander Arlen gathered his officers in the modest meeting room. The walls, scarred by years of repairs and hard work, held the memories of past challenges. With a quiet but firm voice, he spoke of the coming storm. He explained that the enemy was not to be underestimated. Their numbers were great, and their weapons were deadly. Yet he also reminded his team that history had taught them that strength does not only lie in size. Sometimes, a single brave act can change the fate of millions. His words were simple, yet they burned with truth and passion. Outside, the stars continued their silent dance, oblivious to the unfolding drama below. The little ship sailed steadily toward a future filled with danger and mystery. Its engines hummed a soft, persistent tune, a lullaby of resilience that promised that hope was never truly lost. In that moment, the fate of the Emerges Empire began to take shape. The small, underestimated vessel and its loyal crew were ready to face the coming battle. They knew that they might be the spark needed to light up the darkness, to shatter the mighty armada that threatened all they held dear. And so, with every heartbeat echoing in the quiet of the ship, the first chapter of a great story began. The humble vessel, long ignored by the powerful, was about to show the universe that even the smallest light can shine bright in the vast darkness of space. The unlikely vessel. In a quiet corner of the Empire's vast fleet sailed a ship that most have forgotten. Known simply as the unlikely vessel, this small ship looked plain and old. Its metal hull was scratched and faded by time. Many believed that such a vessel could not face the challenges of modern space battles. Yet beneath its worn exterior lay a strength hidden from the eyes of the many. The ship was built in an era long past, a time when the Empire was still young and hope was fresh. Back then, this vessel had been one of many, designed with a simple purpose: to explore, to connect distant worlds, and to serve a small fleet. Over the years, as the Empire grew and powerful new warships emerged, the unlikely vessel was left behind. It became a relic of a simpler time, a piece of history that most thought had no place in the great conflicts of today. Inside the ship, life was very different from what its outside appearance might suggest. The control room was filled with old instruments and worn-out panels, yet each button and dial was cared for by hands that understood its value. The crew, small in number but big in heart, trusted every creak and hum of the engines. They knew every mark on the walls and every scar on the metal. These signs of age were not flaws. They were proof of the ship's long journey and its survival through countless trials. Commander Arlen, the steady and thoughtful leader, had served on the vessel since his early days as a young recruit. His eyes held memories of both past glories and hard-fought battles. Though the ship looked fragile, he believed in its hidden power. To him, the unlikely vessel was more than a machine. It was a trusted friend that had carried his crew through many storms. He often recalled stories of earlier days when the vessel had surprised its foes with clever moves and unexpected strength. These memories filled him with a deep, unyielding hope. The crew was a diverse group, united by a common purpose and an unspoken bond. There was Mira, the skilled navigator who could read the stars like words on a page. Jalen, the engineer who kept the old engines running with a mix of ingenuity and gentle care. And Ravi, the young pilot whose eyes sparkled with dreams of adventure. Each of them had joined the crew for different reasons, but all shared a belief that true strength did not come from grand appearances. They knew that sometimes the smallest spark could light a fire that would burn down the darkest night. Many in the Empire looked upon the unlikely vessel with pity or dismissive laughter. They saw only an outdated relic that belonged in museums or forgotten docks. But for the crew, every scratch on the hull and every creak of the ship told a story of survival and resilience. They remembered small victories, moments when their quick thinking had turned the tide during minor skirmishes. Even when larger ships had failed, this vessel had kept her promise by protecting its crew and delivering them safely through crisis. There was a secret the ship held deep within its core, a secret that even the crew had only begun to understand. Hidden behind panels in the engine room was an old, experimental power source. This source, designed many years ago, but never fully tested, could provide a burst of energy unlike anything seen in modern ships. While it was rarely used, the engine room held careful records and blueprints of this ancient technology. The crew often whispered about its potential, believing that one day it might be the key to turning the tide of battle. They felt that this secret power was a gift from the past, waiting for the moment when it was needed most. The vessel's design, though simple, was built on principles of endurance and careful craftsmanship. Every joint and rivet had been placed with care, giving the ship a hidden strength that modern machines, built too quickly and with too much reliance on new technology, sometimes lacked. In the quiet hours before battle, the crew would gather in the common area and talk about the ship's legacy. They spoke of old legends and songs passed down through generations of sailors. They believed that the ship was chosen for a purpose greater than anyone could see, a destiny to show that courage and heart could overcome any odds. As the unlikely vessel continued its steady journey through the dark void, it carried with it the hopes of its small but determined crew. They sailed not just as passengers, but as believers in the truth that greatness often comes in humble forms. Every small victory in the past, every whispered story of hidden power, built a quiet confidence among them. They knew that while others saw only an old battered ship, they saw a brave heart beating within metal and wires. In the silent dance of the stars outside, the ship moved forward with a purpose. The crew maintained their vigilance, ready to use every skill they had learned over the years. They practiced maneuvers and refined their plans, aware that their enemy would not give them a second chance. Their training and trust in the vessel became a source of strength. With every passing moment, the unlikely vessel proved that even when the world doubted, hope and perseverance could shine through. And so, the story of the unlikely vessel continued. In its simple design and its modest appearance, there was a power that defied expectations. The ship and its crew were ready for the challenges ahead, prepared to face the dark forces that threatened the Empire. They believed that the true measure of strength was not in the size of one ship, but in the courage to stand up when all seemed lost. With hearts full of determination and eyes set on the horizon, they sailed on, ready to write the next chapter in their extraordinary journey. Rising tensions. As the enemy armada drew steadily nearer, a heavy feeling of unease spread throughout the unlikely vessel. In the vast black of space, dozens of enemy ships moved in precise formation. Their presence was like a dark cloud, growing larger with every passing moment. On the bridge, Commander Arlen studied the star map with a furrowed brow. His steady hand pointed to the cluster of enemy vessels, and he knew that the time for talk was ending. The time for action was almost here. In the quiet hum of the control room, Mira adjusted the navigation panels while Jalen monitored the ship's systems. Mira's eyes widened as she noticed the enemy fleet's methodical advance. "They are coming closer," she said in a low voice. Jalen's fingers danced over the controls as he checked every system, ensuring that even the smallest error would not cost them dearly. Each beep from the instruments deepened the tension that pulsed through the ship's corridors. Ravi, the young pilot, sat near the large observation window, his gaze fixed on the approaching warships. He felt a mix of fear and determination. Memories of past close calls, when the vessel had narrowly escaped danger, flashed in his mind. Those moments had taught him that even a small old ship could defy the odds if its crew believed in it. But now, the enemy was not a single stray fighter. It was a massive armada, and the stakes were higher than ever. The silence in the ship was punctuated by the soft, rhythmic pulse of the engines and the occasional crackle of the communication system. Suddenly, a small alarm broke the quiet. The ship's sensors had detected an enemy scout craft nearby. Without warning, the scout fired a burst of energy at a distant asteroid. The explosion of the asteroid sent a shower of debris into space, a clear warning from the enemy. The crew exchanged nervous glances. This was not a random act, but a message of impending war. Commander Arlen quickly gathered his officers in the modest meeting room. The walls, marked by years of service, seemed to listen as he spoke in a calm yet firm voice. "This is only the beginning. Our enemy shows their strength now, but we must be ready for what comes next." His simple words carried a deep truth. Every small act of courage could spark a turning point. The officers nodded in silent agreement, knowing that their training and the ship's hidden power would soon be put to the test. Throughout the vessel, the air grew thick with worry and resolve. In the engine room, Jalen double-checked the ancient experimental power source. Though rarely used, this secret energy reserve could give the ship a burst of strength when needed most. The blueprints and old records, carefully preserved over the years, reminded him that sometimes the oldest technology could provide the greatest advantage. He worked with steady hands, aware that every moment was precious. In the cramped quarters, the crew members whispered quietly about the past battles and small victories that had kept the ship alive. They remembered the time when a stray laser had barely grazed the hull, and how their swift repairs had saved the day. Those memories were a comfort in this dark hour. Each crew member, from the seasoned veteran to the newest recruit, held on to the belief that their small vessel could overcome even the greatest of threats. Outside, on the radar display, signals began to flash more frequently. Each signal was a sign of movement, a hint of enemy activity. The enemy ships were no longer distant silhouettes. They were here, gathering on the edge of human territory. The control panels beeped and buzzed with the growing activity, and every crew member could feel the pressure mounting. It was as if the entire ship was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to break. In a brief moment of calm, Ravi reviewed the flight simulations one last time. The training sessions had been long and hard, filled with drills and rehearsals for this very scenario. His hands gripped the controls tightly, and his heart pounded with anticipation. He recalled the words of his mentors. In battle, it is not the size of your ship, but the courage of your heart that matters. With that thought, he prepared himself for what lay ahead. As the enemy fleet moved ever closer, the tension on board reached its peak. Every member of the crew knew that a full confrontation was imminent. The unlikely vessel, though small and weathered, was now at the heart of a conflict that could change the fate of the Emerges Empire. The ship's creaks and groans seemed to echo the uncertainty of the future, yet they also spoke of resilience and determination built up over years of service. In the final moments before the first contact, Commander Arlen took one last look at his team. Their eyes shone with a mix of fear and unyielding resolve. He knew that each of them had a vital role to play in the upcoming battle. The enemy's shadow had darkened the stars, but inside the vessel burned a light that refused to be extinguished. With every heartbeat, the crew steeled themselves for the confrontation that was coming. The stage was set. In the cold emptiness of space, amid the growing menace of an organized enemy, the unlikely vessel and its brave crew prepared to meet their destiny. The rising tensions signaled that the calm before the storm was ending, and soon their courage would be tested in the face of overwhelming darkness. The turning point. Suddenly, as the enemy armada closed in, the unlikely vessel faced a crisis that no one had seen coming. Out of the deep black, a stray enemy missile streaked toward the ship. The warning alarms rang out, and the entire vessel shuddered under the impact. Although the missile missed the main hull, it struck a critical part of the engine room. Sparks flew, and warning lights blazed as the ship's steady hum faltered. Commander Arlen immediately ordered every crew member to their battle stations, knowing that this attack was the moment that could change everything. In the engine room, Jalen rushed to assess the damage. The room filled with a mix of smoke and the smell of burning metal. Amid the chaos, his eyes landed on a panel that controlled the old experimental power source. This hidden energy unit had been kept in reserve for emergencies, and now it was the crew's only hope. Jalen gathered his team quickly. "We have one chance to save the engine," he said in a calm, urgent tone. With careful hands and precise moves, they began to prepare the system for activation. Every second was precious as the enemy forces gathered outside. At the same time, on the bridge, Commander Arlen gathered his officers in the dimly lit meeting room. The soft glow of emergency lights revealed determined faces. "We have taken a hit, but this may be our moment," he said firmly. "Our secret power source can boost our engines and shields, but we must act quickly and carefully. This is our turning point." His words, though simple, filled the room with a cautious hope. The officers nodded, knowing that the fate of the ship rested on their next decisions. Mira, the navigator, swiftly recalculated the ship's position and plotted a new course. She saw a path that would allow them to maximize the power boost and shield the vessel against the enemy's next wave. Ravi, the pilot, readied himself at the controls. His heart pounded, but he trusted the plan. Each crew member knew that the experimental power source was a long-forgotten secret built into the ship many years ago. Now it was their only chance to stand up to a mighty armada. In the engine room, Jalen and his team flipped the switch to activate the experimental power. For a moment, the entire ship seemed to pause. Then, A bright, steady light filled the engine room, and the old machinery began to hum in a new, deep tone. The experimental energy flowed like a river through the metal veins of the ship, infusing it with a strength that had been dormant for years. It was a risky move, one that could either save the ship or overload it entirely. But it was a risk they had to take. Outside the vessel, the enemy ships advanced with a sense of assured victory. Their sleek forms and modern weapons contrasted sharply with the battered appearance of the unlikely vessel. The enemy commander had never expected such a small old ship to possess any hidden power. As the experimental energy surged through the ship, its defenses began to change. The energy shields, once weak and flickering, now glowed with a steady, bright light that deflected incoming attacks. The enemy lasers and missiles hit the shield and were absorbed or bounced away, leaving the attackers confused and frustrated. Back on the bridge, Commander Arlen watched the transformation on the screen. His calm gaze turned to one of determination. "Our ship is not done yet," he said softly. The change in the vessel's performance was clear. What was once seen as a relic now moved with a force that could rival the enemy's modern fleet. The enemy ships, shocked by the sudden burst of strength, began to hesitate. Their formation wavered, and the confidence in their ranks started to fade. Ravi's skilled maneuvers took full advantage of this moment. He moved the ship into a position that made it even harder for the enemy to target the vital areas. The unlikely vessel, now powered by its hidden secret, dodged enemy fire and launched small counterattacks of its own. Every move was a bold statement. Even an old ship could fight with the heart of a warrior. The experimental power not only boosted the engines and shields, but also gave the crew a renewed sense of purpose. As the battle raged on, the enemy armada found itself in disarray. Their once precise attacks grew chaotic as they tried to adapt to the unexpected strength of the small vessel. In the midst of this confusion, the crew of the unlikely vessel worked as one. Every officer, from the watchful navigator to the determined engineer, played a part in this turning moment. They were no longer the overlooked remnants of a bygone era. They were a force to be reckoned with. In that critical hour, the unlikely vessel's hidden power turned the tide of battle. The enemy, unprepared for the sudden surge of energy and the courage of a tight-knit crew, began to pull back. The old experimental power, once a mere backup system, had become the ship's greatest asset. Commander Arlen knew that this risk had paid off. The vessel was now more than just a relic. It was a symbol of hope and defiance. The turning point was clear. The ship's renewed strength had not only saved it from immediate disaster, but had also shifted the balance of power. In the cold, vast darkness of space, the unlikely vessel shone with a new light, a light that promised that even the smallest spark of courage could ignite a blaze of change. The enemy's retreat marked the beginning of a new chapter in the conflict, one where determination and hidden strength would pave the way for victory. As the ship sailed forward, powered by a secret from the past, the crew felt a renewed belief in their destiny. The crisis had forced them to take a bold, risky step, and in doing so, they had turned despair into hope. The unlikely vessel, with its brave crew and long-hidden power, was now ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, proving that true strength often comes from the most unexpected places. The clash. The enemy armada had not yet retreated. Instead, the battle erupted in a fury that filled the vastness of space with light and sound. The unlikely vessel, still newly empowered by its secret energy source, now found itself in the heart of a full-scale conflict. On the bridge, Commander Arlen stood firm, his eyes fixed on the array of blinking screens. Every signal on the radar represented an enemy fighter or warship advancing with purpose. All hands, prepare for combat. He called out in a clear, steady voice. His words carried across the ship and into every heart on board. Mira, the navigator, worked quickly to adjust their course. She steered the ship into a narrow gap between larger enemy vessels, using the shadows and the scattered starlight as cover. "We need to use our size to our advantage," she said, her fingers dancing over the controls. The unlikely vessel, small and nimble, slipped through the enemy lines like a spark in the darkness. Meanwhile, in the engine room, Jalen monitored the flow of the experimental power. The bright surge from the secret energy source now pulsed steadily, giving the ship faster speeds and stronger shields. He checked every gauge and dial, ensuring that the power did not overload the old circuits. His careful adjustments allowed the ship to maintain its newly acquired strength as it darted through incoming fire. Ravi, the young pilot, sat at the helm with a determined look. The control panel glowed softly under his careful touch as he maneuvered the vessel through a barrage of laser fire and homing missiles. Each dodge and turn was calculated to avoid the enemy's lethal beams. With every near miss, his confidence grew. He recalled the training drills and the many simulations that had prepared him for this moment. The clash was intense, but his focus never wavered. In the space outside, the enemy fighters closed in. Their sleek ships and powerful weapons contrasted sharply with the humble, weathered appearance of the unlikely vessel. They launched coordinated attacks, firing volleys of energy beams that cut through the dark vacuum. But the vessel's energy shields, now glowing like a protective bubble, absorbed many of the hits. When a missile struck the shield, it exploded harmlessly against the barrier, leaving the attackers frustrated and off balance. The enemy's capital ships began to release smaller fighter crafts, and a swarm of tiny vessels swarmed toward the unlikely vessel. The crew's training kicked in as each crew member took on their role. Mira adjusted the navigation to keep the ship moving unpredictably, while Ravi skillfully shifted the vessel from one position to another, making it hard for the enemy to aim. Every twist and turn was a dance of survival. At one point, a well-aimed enemy laser managed to breach the outer shield. The hull of the ship shuddered under the impact, and small sparks flew along the side. The crew felt the shock, but they did not falter. Commander Arlen calmly ordered, "Damage control. Jalen, bring the shields back up full strength." Jalen's hands moved quickly as he rerouted power to the damaged area, reinforcing the shield with the extra energy from the experimental source. In the midst of the chaos, the unlikely vessel launched its own countermeasures. Hidden turrets along the ship's sides, long dormant, sprang to life. They fired small but precise blasts toward the enemy fighters. Each shot was carefully aimed to disrupt the enemy's formation and create openings in their ranks. The surprising counterattack caused confusion among the enemy forces. They were not used to seeing a small old ship fight back so fiercely. The battle raged on with a mix of fear and excitement. Every moment brought new challenges: an unexpected missile, a sudden change in the enemy's attack pattern, and the constant need for quick thinking. The crew, though small in number, worked together like a well-tuned machine. Their simple words and clear orders carried weight in the heat of combat. They trusted each other completely. Outside, the enemy ships began to lose their tight formation. The combination of the unlikely vessel's agility, the strong energy shields, and the sudden burst from its hidden power source had turned the tide. The enemy's coordinated assault started to unravel. Some enemy fighters veered off course, while others broke formation, trying to regroup. This created a window of opportunity for the vessel to press its advantage. Ravi took a bold step and pushed the ship forward into the heart of the enemy group. The ship's engines roared with the extra energy as it burst forward, forcing the enemy fighters to scatter. Each moment of bold movement was met with a quick reply from the enemy, but the small ship kept dodging and striking back. Commander Arlen's voice was calm but firm over the communication system. "Keep steady, keep moving, and never lose hope. We fight not just for ourselves, but for the whole empire." The clash grew more intense as the enemy tried a final, coordinated barrage. Waves of laser fire and missile salvos lit up the dark expanse. The unlikely vessel rocked under the onslaught, but its shields held strong, and the crew maintained their focus. Every crew member played their part, their simple, clear actions combining to create a powerful defense and a relentless counterattack. In that fierce moment, the unlikely vessel proved that strength did not always come in large sizes. With quick thinking, bravery, and a hidden power that had long been forgotten, the small ship and its loyal crew stood their ground. The enemy, caught off guard by this fierce resistance, began to falter. Their once confident formation now looked disorganized and weak. As the battle continued, it was clear that this was more than just a clash of weapons. It was a clash of will, of heart, and of determination. The unlikely vessel, against all odds, was writing its own legend in the stars. And in the heat of the conflict, every spark of energy, every burst of laser fire, and every brave maneuver carved the story of an old ship that would not be forgotten. The clash, fierce and unyielding, marked a turning point. The crew of the unlikely vessel showed that courage and unity could stand strong even in the face of overwhelming odds. The battle was far from over, but with every passing moment, the small ship's defiance grew stronger. The dark void of space echoed with the sounds of conflict, a promise that this fight was not yet lost, and that even the humblest of vessels could challenge an empire's might, shattering the armada. In the heat of battle, the unlikely vessel knew that a final daring move was needed. The enemy armada, already shaken by the ship's unexpected power, now advanced with renewed urgency. Commander Arlen gathered his officers and spoke in a quiet, determined tone. "This is our moment. We will launch one final maneuver to break their formation once and for all." His voice, simple and clear, carried the weight of their hopes. Mira quickly recalculated a bold trajectory. The plan was to steer the ship into the center of the enemy fleet, where the pressure was greatest. By doing so, the ship's hidden energy would not only power its own defenses, but also create a shockwave strong enough to disrupt the enemy's tightly knit formation. Jalen, monitoring the experimental power source, gave a nod. He adjusted the controls so that the surge of energy would be maximized at the precise moment of impact. Outside, the enemy ships closed in. Their sleek vessels moved in unison, confident that they could easily overwhelm a small old ship. But as the unlikely vessel sped toward the center of the armada, a bright glow began to radiate from its hull. The experimental power source, long hidden and rarely used, now burst into action. Its energy flowed like a mighty river through every part of the ship, lighting up the dark void with a fierce, steady light. Ravi gripped the controls tightly as he guided the ship into the heart of the enemy line. Every twist and turn was met with the enemy's rapid fire, but the new energy surge deflected the attacks like a shield. The vessel moved with a surprising speed and agility that belied its humble appearance. The enemy fighters, caught off guard by the sudden burst of strength, began to scatter in confusion. At the exact moment when the ship reached the center of the enemy armada, the experimental power reached its peak. A shockwave of pure energy pulsed outwards, like the ripple of a stone thrown into a calm pond. The force was powerful enough to shatter the close formation of the enemy ships. In that instant, several enemy vessels were knocked off course, their systems overloaded by the unexpected surge. Commander Arlen watched as the enemy armada began to crumble. The shockwave rippled through space, sending enemy ships spinning away from the main group. For the first time in the battle, the enemy's confident formation broke into disarray. The small, unlikely ship had shattered the armada's tight ranks with one daring, calculated move. Mira's eyes widened as she saw the enemy fighters scatter like leaves in a strong wind. "They're falling apart," she said, her voice filled with a mix of relief and excitement. Jalen's careful adjustments continued, ensuring that the experimental power did not overwhelm the ship. Each reading on his panels confirmed that the unlikely vessel was holding steady under the strain of its own energy. Outside, the enemy's capital ships struggled to regain control. The shockwave had not only scattered the smaller fighters, but also sent tremors through the larger ships. They were forced to retreat, their formations broken and their confidence shaken. The once organized armada now looked like a collection of drifting targets, vulnerable and confused. Ravi expertly maneuvered the ship around the falling enemy vessels, avoiding straight fire while launching small counterattacks from the activated turrets. Each shot was a symbol of defiance, a clear message that even the smallest ship could change the course of a great battle. The enemy, now reeling from the sudden turn of events, found it difficult to organize a coordinated response. For a long, tense moment, the silence of space was filled only by the hum of the ship's engines and the steady pulse of the experimental energy. Then, one by one, enemy ships began to signal retreat. The broken armada, now leaderless and scattered, started to pull back into the darkness from which they came. In that defining moment, the unlikely vessel proved that courage and hidden strength could defy even the most formidable enemy. The shockwave of energy not only disrupted the enemy formation, it shattered the arrogance of an entire armada. The vessel, once dismissed as outdated and insignificant, now stood as a beacon of hope and defiance in the vastness of space. As the enemy retreated, Commander Arlen and his crew took a brief moment to catch their breath. They knew that this victory was just one step in a long war, but it was a victory that would be remembered. The bold move had shifted the tide of battle, and the legacy of the unlikely vessel was now forever written in the stars. With the armada in disarray and the enemy in retreat, the ship sailed onward. The experimental power source, now safely returning to its dormant state, had done its part. The crew's belief in their vessel had been rewarded, proving that true strength often comes from unexpected places. The shattering of the enemy armada marked not only a turning point in the battle, but also the beginning of a new era for the Emerges Empire, a time when hope, unity, and the courage of a few could change the fate of many. Aftermath and legacy. After the clash, a calm settled over the unlikely vessel. The enemy armada had retreated, leaving behind a field of scattered ships and a quiet that seemed almost unreal. In the wake of the battle, Commander Arlen gathered his crew in the small common area. Their faces were tired but filled with a deep sense of pride. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, not by size or power alone, but through courage, unity, and the hidden strength of their ship. In the days that followed, the crew worked together to assess the damage and repair the vessel. Though scars marred the hull and the control panels bore signs of the fierce battle, each mark was a testament to their resilience. Jalen led the repair efforts with careful precision, ensuring that every part of the ship was restored to its full strength. Mira and Ravi, side by side, recalibrated the systems and navigational charts, preparing the ship for the long journey ahead. Every task was performed with simple, steady determination. News of the unlikely vessel's stunning victory spread quickly throughout the Emerges Empire. Across the stars, from bustling space stations to quiet outposts, people began to speak of the small ship that had shattered a mighty armada. The story was told in simple, heartfelt words. It was not the size of a ship, but the strength of its heart and the bravery of its crew that changed the tide of battle. Young recruits listened with wide eyes, and veterans nodded in quiet respect, reminded that even the smallest spark could light the way in dark times. In the Empire's busy plazas and quiet lounges, citizens celebrated the victory. There were small gatherings where the story was recounted like a cherished legend. The crew of the unlikely vessel had become heroes, not because they possessed the most advanced technology, but because they believed in hope, in unity, and in the power of perseverance. Their courage had inspired not only those who fought alongside them, but also those who dreamed of a better future. During a modest ceremony on a space station near the border of the Empire, Commander Arlen spoke to a small crowd. In his calm, measured voice, he said, "Today, we have learned that true strength is not measured by the size of our ships or the power of our weapons, but by the courage in our hearts and the bonds we share. Let the unlikely vessel remind us that hope can be found even in the smallest of places." His words resonated with everyone present, leaving a lasting message of unity and determination. The legacy of the unlikely vessel was not just in its battle scars or its secret power, it was in the spirit of its crew. Each member carried forward the lesson that no matter how daunting the challenge, determination and teamwork could overcome even the greatest odds. The vessel became a symbol of hope for the Emerges Empire, a living reminder that every ship, every person, held the potential to change history. As the ship sailed once more into the vast darkness of space, its lights shone like a beacon for all who believed in the strength of the underdog. The unlikely vessel's journey was far from over, but its story had already sparked a new wave of inspiration across the Empire. It stood as proof that with courage, unity, and hope, even the smallest light could guide the way through the deepest darkness. In the silence of the cosmos, the legacy of the unlikely vessel lived on, etched in the hearts of its crew and in the stories told by countless others. It was a legacy of bravery, a testament to the idea that every challenge could be overcome when hearts unite, and a reminder that true power comes from within.